take this collar and move it up and down. I can place it right here inside of the jig, and it'll mark right on it, 1.5 inch material. Now that's where we want the stepped portion of the bit to be. Not the tip of the bit, the stepped portion. The part that basically makes the flat part of our hole. So we line it up there. Now we can take this collar and move it anywhere we want, but we want to take it and move it right up to where it hits right here. Then we take this Allen, we come back in, and we tighten it up. And it was that simple. Now we're set up for 1.5 inches. And I have to warn everybody, because at some point you're gonna have to switch over. When we put the top on, we're gonna switch to 3/4 inch material. So at that time, you're gonna wanna make sure you change the jig here, and you're gonna wanna make sure you change your stepped collar here. Very, very important, because if your material's not 1.5 inches, the screw's gonna go right through that. So you have to be very cautious about that. At this point, I think you understand the setup. It's time to actually grab your drill bit, start making some pocket holes. Depending on the material you're gonna use, sometimes, and also the power of the drill you're using, also will dictate. See the way the drill's kind of giving me a little bit of a hard time? You might want to try a technique where you actually do like little plunges, where you go a little bit, pull it out, you clear the hole, you put it in, you clear it out, you pull the hole, and you push it all the way down. There's no problem with doing this. It just depends on how powerful your drill is, because that's kind of important. You don't want to be sitting there pushing and pushing and pushing. And then honestly, if you do it too hard, you burn out your drill, and they cost a lot more than a Kreg jig. All right, so we've got all of our 1.5 inch thick material holes of our pocket screws. And I know that sounds a little crazy. 1.5 inch thickness, our pocket hole jig is already set at 1.5 inch thickness. So we are gonna change it up and basically drill all our holes now in these rails for the top, to attach the top. So basically, it'll be the holes, if this is one of the side rails, that is gonna go in this way and basically pull our MDF nice and tight down to the top. But we can't utilize the jig the way it is now. We have to change it up a little bit. So at this point, we're set up for as this yanks the drill right out of my hand, we're set up for the 3/4 inch material. Now we just make sure, and the whole entire time, I'm just following the plan right here. I'm following what Kreg Jig gave me. Very, very simple. So right here, now I'm looking at, okay, I want the top rails. It even shows you how many pocket holes to drill. So we've got 3 in each of them. Pretty simplistic. If you want to be crazy, you could measure exactly where the middle is, but it's not necessary. We want to go here, here, and here, and then that'll lock in the top. So we just take it over, bring it right back over to our jig, lock it in place. One thing is where a lot of people kind of mess up here is that they accidentally spin the material around and drill the pocket hole on the wrong side. I'm not going to say you're never ever going to make that mistake, because I've made it myself. So just kind of focus in on, okay, the pocket holes are on this side. Flip it around, make sure, lock it in place like that, and then just do a double take. Perfect. And if you mess up, hey, that's life. You're gonna mess up occasionally. You've got a bunch of scrap material here on the floor. Recut something, drill some new pocket holes, and you're gonna live through the experience. So at this point, we'll just drill all of those in the rails. We'll be putting this thing together in no time. And there you go. We've got all of our pocket holes drilled, both for the legs, the rails, also our MDF top. At this point, it's the fun part of putting it all together. So now is the most gratifying part of the entire project, and that's starting to put it together. We'll be enjoying this workbench soon. But until then, we gotta secure it together. How we're gonna secure it is right here with these 2.5 inch coarse Kreg screws. Very, very important. Just use the Kreg product screws. Don't try to use a drywall screw, because it's important, because see the way that has a flat bottom? The way our step drill bit, this flat bottom will take and sit very nicely in that pocket hole, and then when the screw goes all the way in, it's gonna pull the two pieces together and make for an extremely tight joint. And that's what we want. We want a tight joint, especially with a workbench. This thing's gonna get a little bit of abuse, so you don't wanna you wanna make sure the joint is good to go. So we just stick our screws in. The reason why I do that is because then I'm ready and I can just drill them in. Now I can worry about making the front or the face of these 2x4s flush. And how I do that, obviously I don't have a workbench yet, so I'm kind of working off these 2x4s. So what I do is I'm going to clamp it to both materials. Normally, I like to see the bottom, which is the larger clamp, that goes on the finished surface. So that normally goes on the bottom. Take your finger and run it right along here. You don't even have to look at something like this. It's a feel thing. So you kind of just feel it, and when it's flush, then you hold it with one hand, you take the clamp underneath, and you clamp it together, making sure that you're good to go. Now, that is a sufficient joint in itself. We could screw it and we'll be really good. But this workbench is going to get a lot of use, and we want to just add a little bit extra protection. So what we're going to do, pull this off real quick. We're going to grab a little bit of wood glue, and we're just going to put it right on that joint. And then that way, we won't ever have to worry about this joint coming apart. I like to put the wood glue on like so. Get your finger dirty and rub it in. Make sure that all of the end grain, because it will soak it up pretty quick, is covered. Now you might get a little bit of squeeze out, but again, nothing a rag couldn't finish. And honestly, the tool belt, although it looks like it's for tools, it's really just to wipe the glue off on. It's like a big rag. So we come back and make sure it's nice and flush with our finger, and then we clamp the joint down. Then we can come get our drill. And the first screw is always the most fun to run in. There you go. So we've got our first one, and then all we have to do is wipe off a little bit of the glue here, work over here and get our second one. All right, so now we've got the top rail all done. Now it's time to do the bottom rail. Now, to make this work, you're not going to want to actually, and the plans tell you exactly how high to go with it, but it wouldn't make any sense to put it all the way down here. It just would be a silly looking bench. Because we're making a shelf down here, we're going to basically position it 4 inches up from the bottom. So we just take your tape measure, take your pencil, mark it at 4 inches, and I'm so wishing I had a workbench to put all this stuff on right now. I can't wait till it's done. So we'll mark it 4 inches right there, come over here. Mark the other leg at 4 inches. I'll take my speed square here, run it across both sides. Put a little X here just so I know that I'm above this rail. It's going to fit just like that. Slide this forward, clamp it up, glue it up, screw it, and we'll have one side done. There we go. And we have officially completed one side of the workbench. Look at that. Simple, very, very easy. One thing I will point out is make sure that your pocket holes are facing up to attach the top, not down. Very important. You don't want to miss that step now, because then you're going to have to re-drill those. But we got one side built. Now what we have to do is build the other side, attach the rails, and before you know it, we'll be enjoying this bench. So we've got our front and our back finished. Now to join the front and the back, we need these side rails. They're basically going to go right here. Again, the pocket holes go right down and in. It's the same process as the other one, except for another little tricky tool that you can utilize is this right angle clamp. It basically will fit right in your actual pocket hole, go on the other side, and you'll see me, I'm bending over, so I don't know how the joint looks on the other side. But basically pull the trigger, and then this piece won't walk on you. Now we can unleash the clamp and work on the other side. Perfect. You can start to see it come together. Now we've got one of the rails done. We have 3 more to do. Actually 2 more. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4 more to do. 3 more to do. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll take the top and put it right up on top. Man, I wasn't looking at the plan. That was the problem. Follow along this baby. It'll help you. All right. Boom. Clean up the glue a little bit. We've got this whole side. At this point, what we're going to do is attach it. This top, or this back or side, I guess you want to call it, gets attached like that. But then we'd have to push up with our Kreg screws that way. I prefer to throw this down like this and take the assembly and put it on top. That way gravity is working with me, not against me. There we go. Take a little wet rag and wipe any of the excess glue you got now, but now you get to enjoy it a little bit. Look at this. You've got the skeleton of your workbench all ready to go.